I have an amazing guest for you today. I always say this when it comes to superstars in the plant-based world, that this person needs no introduction. He doesn't, but in case you're very new to us, I will tell you that he is a rock star in the plant-based world. He's been the star of multiple television specials on the PBS network. He's authored many New York Times bestseller, including his latest one, which he feels is his best book, which is called Eat for Life. It is such an honor to please welcome Dr. Joel Fuhrman. Thank you so much for taking your time to talk to us today.
Terrific. Looking forward to it. Always great
Right.
during this time to have people to talk to and get out there. Even though you're not traveling around the country, it's better to do it on Zoom, right?
Absolutely. And you said I could ask you anything. So, I don't ever mean to put my speakers on the spot, but Dr. Fuhrman, since we've been sheltering in place, I've been going live 1 to 3 times a day, really just to create a sense of community
Wow.
and connection with people. And many of the people are leaders in the plant-based movement and medical doctors as well. And there seems to be a gamut in how they're reacting to COVID-19. Some feel that the sky is falling and this is very serious and it's only going to get worse. And some feel, well, it's just a bad flu, and everything in between. So before we get into the questions, because I know you're going to talk about what our best protection is against things like whether it's COVID-19 or cancer, where do you fall on that spectrum with the seriousness of this particular virus?
I think a good place to start would be the fact that I wrote a book about this in 2012 called Superimmunity. And in chapter 1 of that book, I discussed the growing possibility of a pandemic and how infectious disease was become a growing cause of death. And I reported data back then between the year 2000 and 2005. There was about a 50% increased risk of infectious deaths, and how that was going to continue to grow as viruses mutate, as we have ubiquitously have developed micronutrient deficiencies, and the processed food industry and the fast food industry has circulated throughout the globe. And I mentioned in that book that 98% of Americans have broad spectrum and severe micronutrient deficiencies, particularly of phytochemicals and antioxidants, leading for the possibility of viruses to mutate within the host, and that they can mutate their DNA to evade host defenses and capture, and then can penetrate tissues, the lung, cause cytokine storm. And I actually, actually there was a movie called Contagion that actually predicted this as well. So what I'm saying is that it's not surprising that this has happened. And then I wrote a book after that called Fast Food Genocide, which also discussed how, I almost said disgusted, but it is disgusting, but it's almost, and I discussed how fast food destroys the immune system and the brain, and is linked to crime, drug abuse, a gateway drug to alcoholism and criminality, anger. And the more you're addicted and the more you eat fast food and processed foods, the more it makes you selfish, self-centered, narcissistic, and less, a drug addict can steal, cheat, kill to get their hit. And the more we're addicted to fast foods, the more we become irrational in our behavior, and protecting our addictions become a primary mode of living. And what I'm saying right now is, on that spectrum, I don't know where I fall, because I do recognize that we do have a tremendous spike in deaths, in the average death rate around the world in most countries over the last couple of weeks have gone significantly higher. We are seeing tragedies and people dying. However, I'm giving a message of hope and saying that a person with a strong immune system who eats healthfully doesn't have anything to fear. So while I am saying that this is dangerous and we have a lot to fear, I'm saying I'm not fearful at all. And I may have even gotten the coronavirus already and not even known it. And because I remember one night when I flew out to San Diego for a week after that, I had like a little itchy eyes for one night or so, and I blew my nose once. Maybe one nose blow and the itchy eyes was the whole thing. And I don't know, my wife felt a little sick for a few hours. Maybe she felt a little fatigued for a few hours. She might have blown it off in a few hours. Probably the majority of people that get this, that are nutritionally competent or that eat very healthfully, aren't even going to know they get the virus when they get it, because it's going to pass through the system so quickly. So I'm not saying it's not dangerous or it is dangerous. I'm saying that it all depends on the health of the individual person who's exposed, because even a simple Coxsackie virus can mutate and cause Guillain-Barré syndrome or a cardiomyopathy that puts people in the hospital with heart danger because they were deficient in selenium and zinc, and the virus was allowed to mutate, take a more pathogenic form, and invade the body in a deep-seated way. So what this is reflecting is how severely malnourished the current world's population is, that a simple coronavirus could attack and kill so many people. I guess that's my answer.
Right. Thank you for that answer, because I remember hearing you in a recent interview saying that what's going to predict somebody's outcome is the immune strength of the host, and it's also the virulence of the virus. What about people with pre-existing conditions? Like, for example, I think I eat pretty well, maybe not as perfectly as you, but I'm scared only because I've been an asthmatic from birth. I live with 4 smokers. And so I've never seen an epidemic where there was a threat of running out of ventilators, or where people, even younger people, are being on ventilators for this long.
It's true that a ventilator is not a great place, and because it can promote the growth of bacteria, it could increase risk of bacterial pneumonia. Not the greatest thing. I mean, we should have more oxygen tents. More people should be able to be put in an oxygen tent or use nasal cannulas, and we should probably have less people on ventilators. But nevertheless, no, I think that that we can protect ourselves relatively quickly through nutritional excellence. Let me just address that. That let's take a person with diabetes who's overweight. Now, we know being overweight and being overweight with diabetes is going to increase risk of infectious deaths, tremendously so. Fat cells themselves are naturally hypoxic tissue that don't get a great blood supply. So they spew out more reactive oxygen species, and they spew out cytokines and lipokines, which are pro-inflammatory substances. When you're overweight, and significantly so, they make you much more prone to excessive cytokine storm and excessive inflammation and fluid production in response to viral replication. Being asthmatic, and so what I'm saying, let me finish that overweight thing first. And that is that while this overweight person switches their diet over and starts to eat very healthfully, and they start dropping weight at approximately 1 kilogram a week, that's about a pound every 3 days. And if they're dropping weight while they're still overweight, we see the amount of reactive oxygen species, the ability to promote cytokine storm, their insulin resistance, their promotion of aromatase excitation, and all these negative factors that's caused by being overweight starts to go down and to become more normal, even while they remain overweight, as long as their body is flooded with nutritional adequacy and they're losing weight and they continue the weight loss going. A person who's, I don't want people to think that if you're overweight, it's a death sentence, because now that I'm overweight, I'm going to die. Because if you're losing weight relatively at a reasonable rate, and I'm saying, a person on my program, they generally lose about 15 pounds between, 12 and 20 pounds the first month, around 8 to 12 pounds the second month. So it levels off to about 2 pounds a week. And our studies and the investigations also on people who've gone through gastric bypass and lap band, when they're losing weight at about the 8 pounds a month range, we start to see insulin resistance go down. They become non-diabetic even while they still have extra weight on their body. So what I'm saying right now is at that degree of nutritional excellence, we see dramatic improvements in immune function, even while the person still is not at their normal weight yet. So a nutritarian is a person who's at their normal weight, or it's a person who's overweight, but they're moving steadily towards their normal weight, eating right. If they're not eating right enough to be losing weight at that rate, then they're not on the right program. And if they're not losing weight at that rate and their weight is stable and they're overweight, then they're not going to be totally protected against COVID-19. The same thing is true with an asthmatic now. Now let's put that same thing over to an asthmatic. An asthmatic is at increased higher risk because one of the reasons they developed asthma to begin with was micronutrient insufficiencies and immune system deficiencies. So now that we're allowing their immune system to have a full exposure to the right nutrients, their immune system will start to normalize and their white blood cell counts will drop over time. They'll become more normal. An added effect now of the COVID-19, what we're aware of here, is that people on the diet style that I recommend, that I call a nutritarian diet, which is naturally high in green vegetables. It's a diet where we're encouraging people to eat a big salad every day, right? I want people to have a big raw salad once a day, and I want them to use a dressing not made of oil, but instead use nuts and seeds as the source of fat to facilitate the absorption of the phytochemicals, but also because nuts and seeds aren't fattening like oil is. But in any case, so they're having this, and they're probably having vegetable bean soup a day with cooked onions and mushrooms in there. And they're also probably additionally to that, having a serving of maybe mixed vegetables that are woked or conservatively cooked, not overcooked, but are somewhat conservatively cooked. So they're having multiple sources of vegetables a day in their diet. So what I'm saying right now is that with a high exposure to these phytochemicals and antioxidants, we're going to see gradually improvement of the immune system reactivity, less allergic potential, less asthma is going to improve, and the white blood cells go down over time. So the normal range of white blood cells between 5 and 10 on a Quest or LabCorp blood test, I'm saying that's not the normal range for a nutritarian or a person who eats so healthily, because our white blood cells drop to much lower levels than that. I'm considering a normal level, let's say between 2.2 and 7 instead of between 5 and 10. And I'm suggesting that the battery in the flashlight keeps its charge because we keep the flashlight turned off. If we're running the flashlight all the time, when you go to use it, it's going to be a dull battery. The flashlight's not going to light up the room. The point I'm making right now is when you're chronically stimulating white blood cells to be reacting against inflammation and reactive oxygen species all the time, then when you get sick and exposed to a virus, it has a limited ability to react quickly and to react effectively. A nutritarian has the white blood cells demarginated, they're in a resting state, and our stem cells are highly sensitive to rapidly respond. So to answer your question, I think the history of asthma doesn't put you at increased risk. The seriousness of the asthma can be diminished. And just because you have a history of asthma doesn't mean you're going to go into a cytokine storm or your lungs are going to fill with fluid when you're exposed to a virus, though you might be more prone to having some reaction in the lung. And if you're on asthma medication, you should be prepared. In other words, your asthma should improve, you should become less reactive, and you'll become less virally reactive. So if you have asthma, is more of a reason to do this perfectly and to tweak your dietary intake to improve immune function even more. There's no real silver lining in watching people suffer and die and lose their livelihood and be put into poverty. There's no silver lining to this COVID-19, but the one sliver of a silver lining that I'm talking about here is the fact that I've been screaming from the rooftops, as other people have for years, that we can win the war on cancer. And you don't have to get breast cancer, die of prostate cancer, lung cancer, colon cancer. But the American population doesn't accept the change necessary to win the war on cancer. They're looking for a magic pill they can take so they can still eat hot dogs, burgers, and pizza and not get breast cancer, or still like person expecting they can smoke cigarettes and not get lung cancer. But that's a fairy tale, and that's never going to happen. And what I'm saying right now is that what this does with COVID-19, because the idea of dying 20 years from now or 30 years from now wasn't enough to make people change their health habits. But now that the fact that they might die in a week or a month wakes them up to the fact that they got to make some change in their lifestyle habits and diet right now. And the benefit of that is they'll live longer, will have less dementia, less strokes in the future, and less cancers in the future. So that's the benefit. It brings to the forefront the necessity to eat perfectly right now. And it makes my message so more critically important that people kind of can poo-poo it and say, number one, you don't eat that perfect, and he's radical as to, how nobody, who wants to eat that healthy. But number one, we make it taste great. Number two, your taste buds improve. And number three, the little nuances that we're talking about that would extend human lifespan to push that envelope is critical right now because it gives us a degree of protection that can't be gleaned any other way to get this much security and protection from COVID-19.
Great. Well, thank you for saying that about people that are currently overweight or obese, because they have been feeling gloom and doom when other doctors have come on and even the New York Times mentioning how much higher they are at risk. But you're explaining that even if they're overweight or obese now, if they're eating the diet you recommend, they're still much more protected.
Yes, especially if they're doing this properly. We make, like, for example, just give me an example. I have people that come to our retreat and stay here for 2 to 3 months to lose weight, right? And we weigh them every couple of days, and we make sure that we're feeding them appropriately and the size, and what they're eating, that they're losing weight the rate they're supposed to be losing at, so they can know exactly how to duplicate what they're doing here when they go home to keep losing at that rate. If a person has a different type of metabolism or doesn't lose weight normally on what we're feeding them, you have to modulate it or tweak it accordingly to make sure their diet is so that they're losing weight a pound every 3 days. So what I'm saying, that an overweight person has to eat really healthfully and then modulate their intake appropriately. So they're steadily losing weight, because you get immense immune system benefits when you're undershooting calories to be able to access the fat stores on your body so even if you're eating healthfully, but you're giving, because there are people that eat healthfully that overeat. What I'm saying is a nutritarian diet makes it more comfortable not to overeat. It makes it so you don't get those cravings where you have to overeat. You don't get the toxic hunger where you feel weakness and fatigue and shakiness when you don't constantly put calories in your mouth. But it's still possible to be on a healthy diet, like I'm even recommending, and still taking more calories because you're an emotional eater and you're eating for recreation, and you're eating too much, and you're eating too much this, you're eating too many dates, you're eating too much this. There's still all these people and what I'm saying is you have to tweak that appropriately to make sure they are dropping weight accordingly, and then they can protect themselves.
Thank you. Are there other factors other than diet that help increase or protect our immunity?
Certainly, chronic emotional stress, chronic fear, and getting enough rest and sleep play the biggest role, even more important than exercise. Exercise is great for healthy people, but the most important thing is to get healthy so you feel like exercising. So definitely getting enough sleep, and also being under chronic stress and chronic anxiety is not great for your health. So we found that the diet increases your risk of death, and then the increased risk of death puts you at chronic fear and chronic anxiety. So, I mean, obviously, what I'm saying right now is that eating conventionally keeps you at chronic. People are forever fearful. Women going in for mammograms all the time and breast biopsies and having they're under chronic fear of breast cancer. Is it worth that? Is the bagels and the pizza worth that chronic fear of getting breast cancer and having going in with mammograms and biopsies and needles and all that stuff people have to undergo? So it's the same thing here, but this is magnified even more because people are they're totally petrified of leaving their house. And that's not even good for their health, just to be fearful all the time. Our emotions play a role in our health for sure.
So what do you recommend for the chronic stress people who are under? Exercise, meditation? What's your prognosis? And
Have fun. Why do I eat healthfully? I eat healthy because I want to have fun. I want to enjoy things and do things that are fun. I have so much fun in my life, so I don't want to eat unhealthy and have to be sick and can't have fun, can't do fun things. I just climbed a mountain this morning. But it was so beautiful outdoors. I'm always doing something fun every day. I do some meditation, or I do some stretching, I do some exercise, but I mostly exercise having fun, playing tennis or going surfing or going, in the mountains or doing biking. I just doing playing volleyball. I just want to exercise, but you want to be physically fit so you can have a lot of fun in your life.
Well, you seem very calm. Do you think these sheltering in place and these mandatory masks, do you think it's necessary, and do you think it's working?
Well, I don't know I don't know enough about if this virus is going to peter out with the heat or not, and I don't know that. So we don't know some of that thing. So what I'm saying right now is we know that we're lowering the curve a little bit so that we don't have so many people flooding hospitals. But it doesn't mean that less people are going to die from this in the long run. It could just be stretching out those deaths into the future. So even all the millions that have died already may not even be the mass of people that's going to die. There may be as many people or more people dying yet to come just because we flattened the curve. So what I'm saying right now is that keeping our hands away from our face and keeping distances from people who especially are sick. I mean, I don't know that wearing masks does anything, except maybe if people are coughing or sick, they shouldn't be out anyway. But I mean, people who are in that stage of their infection where they're not yet coughing or sneezing, where they just got the virus but have no symptoms yet, they don't have the fever, they don't know not to stay out, the amount of virons projected from their normal breath isn't going to be enough to get enough concentration to give people a high enough viral load unless you are right up against their face. So I'm not sure about how much we're doing, but I know that they're keeping people away from each other, from congregating in large places. People being much more careful with this, with their, their gloves remind you not to touch your face. You can still touch surfaces and touch your face with a glove. It's, you can still use the glove. A lot of people I'm seeing work and they're wearing gloves, but they're still touching everything and still touching their face with the gloves on. It's still not going to be much different than their hands. But so yes, it's having some effect at flattening the curve a bit. But it doesn't mean that this virus is not going to continue to be a problem that's going to infect people across America. And we have to rely on, and the only way to really defeat this virus, and the other viruses that are going to come a year or two from now that could also be just as dangerous, is to improve our immune function, and including bacteria that's going to cause bacterial pneumonia that's going to be more severe in the future, that we now have no antibiotics that are going to treat them, because we're developing dangerous bacterial infections too with animal husbandry and over antibiotic use. So it's not going to, it's always going to be a case that trying to be an excellent immune responsiveness and immune system strength is always going to be important. Nutritional excellence is going to be important moving forward into the future. It's not going to end as this virus peters out in the summer. Whether it peters out or not, I'm not sure, but it could come back again in the fall with another wave, or it could stay high through the summer. We're yet to see what's going to happen there, but now's the time to get in great shape.
I agree with you, and I'm finding that there's been two kinds of people that have been attending these live community chats. Some that are looking at this as sort of a gift. They have a little bit less stress. They're not working. They can take the time to prepare healthy meals, clean their environment. Other people are so scared and stressed, or maybe they're food addicts living with other food addicts where their diet is actually getting worse.
Yes, that's absolutely true. A food addict looks for every opportunity to delve into become more of an addict. There's always an excuse why they can't eat healthfully, and a person who's not a food addict could use it as a threat. I'm agreeing with that. That's what cocaine addicts do too. They have more access to cocaine, they use more cocaine. They have less access, they use less. That's why you have to get the cocaine away from them. A food addict could be in their heaven because they have more access to that here now, and more of an excuse where they can rationalize why they can. But obviously, we're out there telling people that we have to work on getting rid of your addictions. You need professional help. The professional help is available, and we can save people's lives by recognizing that fast food and processed food is highly addictive.
Yeah, you had mentioned your book, Fast Food Genocide, and so many people have read it and love it. And even though your favorite book is your new one, that really is my favorite book of yours.
I love that book, Fast Food Genocide, but it's my least popular book because it's such a scholarly work that has so much interest and interesting reading. It's such interesting reading, I think, for people to read. They really enjoy it, but they don't know that because either they're scared away from the name, or because my other books are more about losing weight, or a recipe book, and people that a recipe books sell and weight loss books sell very much greater. And so I'm always going to have other books about getting rid of diabetes are going to become bestsellers more than Fast Food Genocide. But that's a really important book that maybe when I'm dead, people will start to realize that.
Well, I'm sure it's going to be a long time before you're dead. But I love that book, and that's really probably the one I recommend the most, because most of the people I'm dealing with are food addicts, and it seems that even when they try to take control of their food addictions, they always seem to be living in a situation with either a spouse or children that they're up against people that just don't want to change, and they won't allow them to clean their environment or eat. It's very hard for these people.
Yeah, I can imagine. I know. And it's funny because that was always in the back of my mind for the last 20 years. I was thinking of having a place where people can come specifically for food addiction, because like drug addiction, there's all these drug addiction rehab places, but nobody's taking food addiction seriously. And people need to get away from their environment and their families to get away from those triggers and have this emotional support and the psychological counseling to get rid of their addictive triggers. And it takes a specialty of professional help these people need, and nobody's recognized that. And so now that I've, took me all these years to do it, but I got it. And I enjoy working with these people. I have some people here that are young and that, weigh over 300 pounds, but they're really nice, intelligent, and the fact that they recognize they had an addiction problem with food and they're getting over it. And it's very exciting and rewarding work to work with people and to feel that you can transform their lives in a way like this and help them get rid of something like a food addiction.
Well, I really appreciate the work you do, and especially that you believe in food addiction, because I take a lot of hits from other doctors in the plant-based world saying that my approach, which is it's very similar to your, Dr. Furman, we really disagree on very little. But I don't use the oil, I don't use salt or sugar or processed food. But they say, well, my way of telling people to eat is too extreme and it's too strict and it's hurting the plant-based movement because people aren't going to want to become vegan if they can't use sugar and salt and flour and things like that. So, do you think that our approach is too extreme for most people?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, over the years, I've become more strict in my approach, not less strict. I was strict years ago, and I've ratcheted up the strictness because just my experience with so many thousands of people that the the little bit of cheats would always be the trigger that got them back to going off the diet and got their weight to come back again, and recognizing that the alcoholic can't just go out and have alcohol on the weekend, and the food addict just can't have the french fries once a week and can't just have their cheesecake or their dessert. So that, and to have them recognize that, and the food addict to realize that this is not deprivation. We're not being forced to do this. You're allowed to do whatever you want, but we prefer to live within these boundaries because we like these substitute recipes, and these desserts and these foods still taste very good to us. And the other foods really become triggers and make it more difficult for us to take care of our health. So I'm glad that your development of your program has moved closer to mine over time. And now my development of my program has moved closer to that over time too, because I've become more like, I can't let these people fool around with these compromises, because it leads them down the path to more and more compromise, and they don't see the miraculous benefits, and they don't get the full benefits for themselves. So what I'm saying is the magic happens. Their psoriasis goes away. Their smelly armpits goes away. Their bad breath gets better. With a little bit of cheats, the weight loss slows down. A little bit of oil has a tremendous effect at halting weight loss, because lipolysis, it means the breakdown of fat. And oil has a tremendous ability to halt lipolysis. So even a little bit of oil can say the person weighs themselves. I didn't lose weight for 3 days. I only lost a half a pound this week. What did I do wrong? Well, you went out and had oil one day, and then the whole week's work of all that effort they put in all week long was just shot because they had that one little bit of oil. So, I think those people who were saying that hasn't worked with with these hundreds and thousands even of patients that get into trouble. And the worst thing is for me is when a person calls me up from the ICU and says, I should have listened to you. I just had a heart attack. I'm in the ICU, blah, 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 blah. But I know you told me this was going to happen. And I know I should listen to you back then, blah, 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 blah. And I'm saying, oh, God. So yes, I'm saying we have to tell these people what's real and what's best for them, their lives. And if they want to do what's not best, it's on them. My niche has always been to tell people what's best, so they get properly informed, and tell them what's going to minimize their risk, what's going to be the best opportunity to live a long, healthy life. And if they want to modify it or do something different, you can't sometimes help everybody.
Right. But I think for addicts, the moderation approach just doesn't seem to work.
That's right. There's too many people who the moderation approach doesn't work for. That's right. Some people can have a little bit of this and a little bit of that and still overall keep pretty healthfully. But for a lot of people, especially this extreme overweight, who've proven their addictive relationship with food, they really have to recognize they have to be treated like an alcoholic. And you feel better, and eventually your taste buds get better, and you start to realize this is not prison, that the prison was being the addict. That was the prison. This is setting them free. Putting up the right boundaries gives them the freedom to eat a little more food, to feel good about themselves, to feel, it gives their life much more freedom, creativity, emotional security, concentration, and feeling good about themselves too, as a person, and improving their, goodwill for others. What I'm saying right now is when you get rid of your addiction, you become more of the person you always could have been, and you become less self-centered and less self-focused and more ability to help other people and to do good in this world. And we see that over and over and over again, that when people get rid of their food addictions, they're much more productive, effective, and kinder as people in their and to their ability to affect others. I had that, it's so evident with so many people who've lost a lot of weight, how they become a ray of light. like they've become, I'm proud of the fact that I say to these people, you've gotten superpowers. You've got your health back, your sim, and now the rays of those powers radiate out like light, and your ability to affect and help other people and take care of their health because you've first taken care of your health and become a great role model in this. And that's what, I say, do we need these superpowers for people to be able to fight aliens and fly through the air or bend steel? Or we need this, or what's happening to our communities? People are dying left and right of heart attacks and strokes and cancers, and now COVID-19. And the superpowers we need is to save people from nutritional ignorance that's devastating our population and causing incredible human tragedy. And when people get well, they become a radiant example of the power to help other people, and they become examples of, they become more goodwill and more desire and ability to interact with people and have goodwill for them.
Wonderful. People watching live keep asking if you know of any nutritarians or otherwise healthy people that have succumbed to the virus.
I know lots of us who have succumbed to the virus who think that we may have succumbed to the virus, but haven't really been hardly made sick by it. You know what I mean? So yeah, but I think we'll know that more in the upcoming month when we can start giving the tests are available through Quest. You can order them online, and we can all do antibody tests, and we'll actually be able to see that for sure. But my guess is, yes, I think that there's been lots of us who've still been traveling, speaking around, and been exposed, and where some persons got really sick in the same exposure environment, haven't gotten sick at all. So I think, yes, it's probably going to be the case that we'll find that out probably in another 4 weeks or so. When I'm hoping within 4 weeks, we're going to have the routine availability of testing to see who got it already. You know what I mean?
Great. Circe asks, can you talk about the higher rates of death of COVID-19?
That's Cersei from Game of Thrones?
I don't know. Her name is, it looks like Circe Shakespeare Blue. Do you watch that show, Dr. Fuhrman? I couldn't even get through it once.
You didn't watch Game of Thrones?
Dr. Fuhrman, I tried, but there was at the second episode, it looked like they were going to hurt the dog, and I couldn't watch it anymore.
Oh, okay. Oh, it's fantastic.
Really?
And also, like, I love Harry Potter stuff too. I mean, there's so, we're living in an era like Dickens and Shakespeare, but I think like Harry Potter is like absolutely phenomenal, and will be a historical thing, too. It's just great. But yeah, I think these books and these movies are fantastic.
Yeah, so let's just, we'll talk about high blood pressure in a minute. I'm really excited to find out what you like to watch on Netflix and Amazon Prime. So please answer that question.
I just finished watching All American, the first 2 seasons. I really enjoyed that. I watch all kinds of things, superhero stuff, and I was watching Black Lightning. I was watching I don't know. I watch anything I feel like watching. I like yeah, I was watching Netflix movies. I just watched the other night with my wife. We just watched Inglourious Bastards. We never saw that movie with Brad Pitt. It was really good.
Wow. Do you ever watch any shows like Schitt's Creek or Mrs. Maisel, any of those kind of shows?
Oh, I love Mrs. Maisel. Sure, I watched that. That was fantastic. I've even watched something called Unorthodox. It was only 4 shows. It was the acting was unbelievable.
Wow. It's nice. It's nice.
Oh, you know what I like? Outlander. You ever watch Outlander?
I heard wonderful things about it.
It's so realistic in the history and it's so great. I mean, it's the film cinematography is unbelievable. It's like you're back in the past. It's so realistic looking, and it's fantastic.
It's nice to know that you're a real person and do these kind of things.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Well, do you remember, I just take a walk down memory lane almost 10 years ago. You have a very good sense of humor, and you're very funny. And do you remember that time you've eaten at my house when I lived in Sherman Oaks a couple times, and we filmed some episodes for when I was doing this little YouTube show, and you pretended to be a French chef, and you had to go to the grocery store, Ralph's, to get some sugar and some Crisco, and you were recognized in the grocery store buying the most crappy
buying marshmallows and Crisco oil and recognizing the hell in the store buying that stuff for the joke. Right.
Yeah. And I'll put a link to that, but that was hilarious. You were such a good sport.
If I want to go into a restaurant, I have to wear one of those fake noses and mustaches and those glasses, so people don't see me.
That's always my biggest fear, because sometimes I buy junk food for experiments, just to show. And I'm like, oh my God, I just hope somebody doesn't see me. So very good. So going back to Circe, she says, can you please talk about the higher rates of death of COVID-19 with those with high blood pressure? Can someone do now who has high blood pressure to reduce it? Isn't it going to be the same? Whatever their disease is, the answer is going to be the same.
That's correct. I have a book called The End of Heart Disease, The End of Diabetes, Superimmunity is a book that's about cancer and immune system support. But all the books, the diet in every book is very similar. So it's not. So in my last book, Eat for Life, has like an example of menu plans and diet for people with high blood pressure and heart disease, a diet for diabetes, a diet for people who have cancer and immune system dysfunctions. But the difference between each particular diet is very, very slight. It's the same overall principle. The basic principle here is that the most proven methodology to slow aging and extend human lifespan, and these are the important words to write down, these 7 words coming up, is moderate caloric restriction in the context of micronutrient excellence. Let me say that again. Moderate caloric restriction in the context of micronutrient excellence. Now that leaves out the second principle, which is comprehensive nutritional adequacy. That means every peg in the dike has to be, you can't be low in any one nutrient. We have to have a broad spectrum of every nutrient. So what I'm saying right now is that also that when your diet is high in micronutrients and you have every micronutrient need pegged at the same time with no deficiencies or insufficiencies present, it naturally makes you desirous of less calories and you're no longer the calorie consuming monster. So eating the right amount of calories becomes more instinctually possible and more comfortable to not overeat. So as you achieve more micronutrient richness, it's easier to eat the right amount of calories. And the word moderate caloric restriction is important because everybody in America is overweight. Everybody is overweight. When I'm saying everybody, I'm saying 89% of the men and women have a BMI above 23, and then 11% that are of a normal weight, most of them are either have an autoimmune condition, smoke cigarettes, alcoholics, digestive disorders, occult cancers, or some disease keeping them slim. It's only 2.4% of Americans are at a normal weight because they eat healthfully and they exercise regularly. And and what I'm saying right now, I said this in my book, Superimmunity, written in 2012. I wrote that in the book. I wrote 98% of Americans are a high rate of infectious-related death when a virus mutates and starts to become more dangerous. We're going to have 98% of Americans with immunosuppression at high risk of immune system and infection-related death. I wrote that back about 9 years ago, and we're seeing it happen right now today.
Wow. Well, you always talk about the importance of vegetables in general and greens in particular. And
Right.
they're not only these nutritional powerhouses that help our immunity, but I find that that's what really helps with overeating and curbing the cravings. And so many people just don't eat vegetables.
You're right. I try to like regiment the lunch we serve here and that I eat myself. So I have a big salad and a bowl of vegetable bean soup and a piece of fruit. So when people go home, they always stick to that lunch as a big salad, a vegetable bean soup and a piece of fruit all the time. Just stick to the whole country just did a big salad. But what I'm saying is when I chop up that amount of green vegetables and I put like the bok choy or the arugula in with the lettuce or the cabbage, and I have the tomatoes in there and the cucumbers and the peppers and the red onion and the scallion and the everything's in that salad, and I put the dressing on top and I have a bowl, it's filling. I felt like I can't eat that much. You can't eat that many calories. You're full. And then dinner comes around 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock and I'm still not even hungry yet because I had just from all the greens I ate and all the vegetables and the beans I ate, it was so filling from that. The point I'm making is that when you eat a lot of vegetables, that's right, it becomes it reduces your desire, obviously, for other things. And then you can eat a lighter dinner, or you just have some cooked vegetable. Or you can eat an earlier lunch, a lighter breakfast. You can have 1 light meal and 2 normal sized meals. You can have 3 smaller meals or 2 big meals. But the point is that this idea of 3 heavy, calorically rich meals every day, we're indoctrinated, like we're fed like stuffed goose, like force fed, and where people are so trained to chronically overeat. So so many of us don't feel normal unless we chronically overconsume calories over and above what we need. So we have to get back into eating and not being full, not eating when we're not hungry, not eating by the clock, not recreational eating when there's a biological need for food, and try to recognize that just under-eating a hair is going to extend your lifespan. Just a little bit of under-eating. Go to bed a little hungry some nights. Eat a lighter dinner, and if you feel a little hungry, just take a glass of water and go to bed. In other words, try to just under-eat a little bit and make sure you keep yourself slim.
Mm. That's hard. You've never been overweight. But at least when I overeat now, it is on greens and that's it.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I'm not perfect. I sometimes overeat a little bit too, but I'll make it up the next day, and I'll try to say, okay, I'm gonna eat an earlier dinner today. I'm gonna go. But I sometimes you can, and working with people and teaching them and running detox programs, it helps me too, because I'm telling them to do what I want to do, and it makes me do it better because I'm teaching them to do it, and I'm working with them, and we're gonna do it together. We're both gonna try to, like, okay, let's just have like a wok vegetable dish for dinner and a little, like, raw vegetables like carrots and peppers on the side and jicama dipped in like a little hummus, a little eggplant hummus, and we're gonna have like a little mixed Thai dish. We're gonna try to keep our calories tonight at dinner to like 300 to 400 calories. We're gonna finish dinner by 6 o'clock. We're gonna go to bed a touch hungry tonight. Let's do it all together. So it's like, okay, we're gonna so we're gonna keep slim. And I even have dropped a few pounds and trying to keep and watching the fact that I less and less of meals where I try to overeat, and more of this idea of going to bed on an empty stomach, make sure I'm not digesting when I'm trying to sleep at night, try to get the digestion finished for the day and feel like everything's done, and then you're going to go to bed. So try to get your calories stacked earlier in the day and don't eat a heavy meal at night. So yeah, I've had trouble. I'm not perfect, but I'm trying to do better on that too. Just, I'm going to encourage everybody else to do better on it as well.
Right. Everybody I've talked to agrees don't eat late in the night. And I think one of the reasons that we both can sometimes overeat is because the food we eat is delicious.
Oh, exactly. It's exactly. It's so tasty. It's so good, but we got to watch ourselves and eat the right amount of food. But I
Did
don't
you
want people to think that this doesn't. We're all in this together, and we can do this together. And it's not that hard. It's fun, and it's certainly the benefits are so worth it.
did you like the vinegars?
Yes, and I have a lot. I've always used flavored vinegars and stuff like that's definitely.
Terrific. Well, a lot of people, even that eat healthily, because I have a really question. I have a question here from a nutritarian named Barbara. Seem to suffer with a lot of GI stuff lately. There's just seems to be a huge increase in IBS, IBD, SIBO. As a matter of fact, I'm going to be hosting a gut health summit very soon, and she says, after treatment for SIBO, I'm still having digestive difficulties, bloat, distension and gas, and chest pain when adding back certain cruciferous vegetables like broccoli and cabbage and all beans and legumes to my nutritarian diet diversity. And this is somebody that followed you for years, Dr. Fuhrman. I know this person.
Yeah, but if they were treated for SIBO, then they're not following, because obviously I don't recommend SIBO treatments. They're dangerous and taking antibiotics and but so I think that's largely a scam and an improper eating, an idea that they do these stool tests and they find they have overgrowth of bacteria and they treat them with special antibiotics and they give them special diets. I'm not really for that. I'm for more intermittent fasting and chewing food better and liquefy. And now that she's away from those foods, she doesn't have the enzyme to digest them and the bacteria to digest them, and she tried to kill bacteria by reducing the amount of bacteria by taking antibiotics. So it just confuses everything. The most important thing for people like this is to focus on liquefying everything they eat in their mouth and making sure no salad goes down and no cruciferous vegetables goes down that still has any solid particles. In other words, you have to chew the broccoli till it's a liquid and say, yep, that's a liquid. I can swallow it now. The lettuce, there's no small pieces of lettuce or greens in there. It should be liquefied by chewing and mixed with your saliva. And then the bean intake can be modulated, not to take it out completely, but to titrate the bean intake, starting with easier to digest beans like lentils and chickpeas, and split peas, of course, but modulating that to like a tablespoon with every meal. Instead of eating a cup with one meal and no meal and then none the next, just eat a tablespoon with every meal and allow the bacteria in the gut to gradually regenerate. My experience with people like that who've been eating healthfully and then treat their SIBO and go back to eating healthy again, it can take them 6 to 12 months to get, they've hurt their digestive capacity by the treatment from SIBO, and they've made things worse, not better, by taking the antibiotics. If they did nothing and just used probiotics with better chewing and more time between meals, they could have made a long-term recovery much simpler.
I've never heard that. So thank you. I've never heard that about liquefying, and that's thank you. That's an explanation that nobody has ever said before. The second part of her question, though, which I'll ask, is, are there nutritarians who simply should not eat certain recommended food, but the more important part of the question is, but could still live healthily while maintaining good biodiversity and super immunity? So you're probably going to say no.
No, I'm not going to say no. I mean, it depends. I'm going to say it depends. Because there are people with allergies that can't eat certain foods like wheat and things, and there are some people who can't eat soy. I'm not going to say that they can't have good health because they can't eat a soybean. There's enough other beans they can eat. You know what I mean? I do have people with nut allergies who can eat some hemp seeds or eat some nuts or eat something like a flax seed. We do the best we can. I know that nutritional diversity enhances ability for health and longevity. What I'm saying right now, that even looking at the blue zones, I do not consider blue zones areas of the world where the diets are idealized or are eating for optimal health. They're just luckily have diets that are pretty much better than the American diet based on what's culturally eaten and grown in those regions, but they're not scientifically designed to have the biochemical and micronutrient diversity that we can have in modern society by using modern science, by using wild blueberries and microgreens and sprouts and arugula. And, so we have a much more ability to mix the wide variety of nutrients available in the plant kingdom, including mushrooms. But if a person couldn't eat mushrooms, I'm hoping they're doing the other 5 bombs appropriately. You know what I mean? But it's still a benefit to be able to eat some mushrooms. There are a lot of the blue zones that don't eat mushrooms. They're still doing okay, but mushrooms would make it even better. Well, that's what a nutritarian diet is. It takes it to that level of including all those foods that have the beneficial effects and not excluding a category that could have improved your health. As you do so, you may cause some problems and but you do the best you can. It's still going to be better than most other people eat. And, and they can eat, and most people, unless they're severely allergic, can eat some mushrooms or some beans or a little bit of nuts and seeds, can do some things that they don't digest well and still do it in small amounts and not totally exclude that food category.
That
Right?
makes sense. So when somebody is we have a lot of plant-based gastroenterologists now that we didn't used to have before, and some of them are even doing telemedicine. So when somebody gets this diagnosis of IBS or IBD, you're saying they shouldn't even have the breath test. We shouldn't even find out if they have SIBO, because then they're going to be offered the antibiotics. And
That's correct. It's not necessary. It's more invasive and more needless medical expenditures and needless medical intervention that could have been solved in a much simpler, less expensive, and more effective way. And most people aren't eating healthy who develop those diseases and who develop SIBO anyway.
I actually know this individual, and I swear.
No, I said most people.
Yeah,
I'm not saying that there's one individual. There's always exceptions.
Right. Okay. Well, I know I've heard you say you're not going to write another book, but if you did, do you think you could write a little bit about the gut health? Because that's really seems to be what a lot of people are suffering from now.
I could write about gut health. There's a lot of things to write about, thyroid disease and everything else. But to be honest with you, I really enjoy working with people, and I do enjoy lecturing too. And I've spent so many years writing books that I think I have to not write books for a long time, maybe never, because I want to, I'm 66 years old and I want to have a more balanced life. When you're writing a book, I'm working like a 90-hour week and having my normal 40 hours of work week and then work another 30 hours trying to write a book at the same time. And I got to start trying to be more normal and having a normal balanced life where I exercise regularly and I have some time to watch television or read a book myself. I haven't read a novel or a fun book since, hardly ever. I did read the Harry Potter series. I did read but I have some books, I don't want to be writing, because writing books means you got to work all day and all night and through the middle of the night. Because it's just, I want to not have that level of workload right now after writing 12 books.
Well, you deserve it. So take a break. And I'm going to recommend, I know you're really athletic. I don't know if you ever heard of pickleball, but it is literally the funnest thing you could do.
Pickleball?
Yeah. Have you played it, Dr. Fuhrman?
Yeah, sure. Because I'm a tennis player. So I played pickleball in the past.
It's right now they finally reopened the courts here where I live near Palm Springs, and they won't let us play doubles, but we can play singles. Okay. I've always wanted to ask you this. There's just one thing you've been saying for years, and I just can't experience this. I've worked at True North on and off for 10 years, where I've actually met people that have fasted for 42 days, and they've never felt this throat hunger. Even when I fasted, I don't ever feel anything here. Is there something wrong?
Fasting takes away your hunger. You don't feel hunger when you fast. You feel hunger when you start eating a little bit again. I think there may be 10% of the population that once they get really healthy, do not go back to feeling throat hunger again, and after chronic overeating for so long. But most people do feel hunger in this part of the region of the body, right up here in the upper chest. I'm sure there are some people who don't feel it, but then you've got to be more careful because your throat hunger is a very easy way to monitor your calories when you're hungry. What other symptoms do you feel when you get hungry?
Honestly,
By the way, you're not going to get hungry when you fast. When you fasting takes away hunger, but when you're eating moderately small amounts and you skip one meal, or you're going out and you can't get to lunch and you're going towards dinner time and you've known you've under-eaten calories, what do you feel?
I hear my stomach. I literally hear, "Grrr," and I'm like, oh yeah, it's 2 o'clock. Maybe I should eat something today. That's for me how it, because I honestly, I eat so many vegetables, Dr. Furman. I start my day with like 2 pounds of greens that my hunger switches. I don't really get very hungry. I have to sometimes remind myself to eat. But if it's been a long time, my stomach starts making noises. And that's how I think, oh, maybe I better put something in it.
Well, hopefully you'll get well.
You're funny. Okay. Dr. Furman, in some previous interviews and books, when I say you've not recommended, but you've allowed a certain amount of percentage of animal products. Not that you recommend it, but do you think going with what's going on today, especially this virus, they say came from animals, that it would be better to recommend no animal products?
I'm not sure of the question. I always think that it's most likely the case that no animal products with a diet that's conservatively and intelligently supplemented with extra zinc, DHA, B12, K2, whatever it is you're supplementing with, to make for nutrients that may not be optimized in a diet that's completely vegan, is most likely going to extend human lifespan longer than one that includes animal products in smaller amounts. That's especially most likely the case because even the smaller fish, like sardines, are now contaminated with microplastics. So it's probably an advantage to going all the way vegan and then taking a little extra zinc, B12, vitamin D, DHA, than trying to get those by eating a little bit of sardines or a little bit of, what I'm saying. So you can't prove that with 100% certainty, but using the best science that's available, I advocate to people to shoot for a total vegan diet. But of course, when I'm saying that 5%, 0 to 5%, it's mostly because the science is not hard enough for me to give definitive and strong recommendations. That's going to make a big difference for healthy people. But most likely, it's better health-wise to go vegan all the way. I'm never advocating people use animal products. I just don't want to exclude people from adopting this nutritarian program or a healthy eating program because they refuse to go totally vegan. And this is not a religion, and you don't have to, and it's not prison, and you can do whatever you want. You just choose to eat healthy most of the time and be on this as strictly as you choose to. And if a person wants to have an animal product once a month because they feel that'll help them stay with healthy eating the rest of the month better, then because they don't want to feel they've given up every part of their enjoyment, I'm not going to discourage them from, you know what I mean? So you got to just be reasonable and try to be scientifically accurate at the same time. But at the same time, I'm agreeing with you.
Okay, so one of the things I like about you is you tell the truth about numbers, and every time I've heard you talk about how many Americans are actually overweight, you say it's really not the 70% that we're told because they've skewed the BMI charts, that it's more like 90%. So if most people are overweight or obese, and I would say a large majority of those are food addicts, who are these people that can eat 5% animal products, and how do you even eat animal products without sugar, oil, or salt? They taste terrible without sugar, oil, and salt.
What about packing up those little styrofoam packets they use in packing material? If you bread them and you put them in oil and bread them with egg and you fry them, they taste pretty good.
All right. Yep. You have a very interesting sense of humor.
Anyway, I hear what you're saying. You're saying that if you take animal products and you barbecue them, you fry them, you roast them, you flame broil them, and you darken them and make them crispy, they taste pretty good. But those cooking, the methods of cooking in which you make animal products taste good are generally cause heterocyclic and other carcinogenic compounds to form. But there are people who still like animal products made in a soup or a stew that's water-based, putting scallops or salmon or a grass-fed meat or turkey into a soup or a stew that's not increasing the carcinogenic potential and have it in small amounts. There are some people who could do that occasionally and not be a major source of the caloric intake. I'm just not willing to make it, you know what I mean? I just want to not exclude anybody for people to say, oh, I'm not even going to read that information or learn about healthy eating because he's a vegan. And whether I'm a vegan or not is irrelevant. What my religion is irrelevant. What I do myself is irrelevant. What's relevant is the science. And you have to give people a fair interpretation of the science that's a comprehensive look, and that your interpretation has no predetermined bias. We know in the vegan community, most people writing books, giving lectures, are inherently biased, and they're promoting a philosophical agenda, and they're promoting their own ego-based agenda because they want to support themselves with what they've said or what they write about. And they're not opened to the fact that there's some leeway or nuances or changes that science could now evaluate and make us more. In other words, when I read the literature, I see all these only the studies showing, a biased interpretation or review of the studies in the article that's been written. They're trying to collect the information to argue their point of view and not exposing the people to the other side. And that's where my books, let's say, I try to, like when I'm talking about something about in one of my books, The End of Heart Disease, or in Eat for Life, I'm giving all the studies about and discussing both viewpoints and why I logically came to this decision based on reviewing all the data. And I've reviewed, and why I had to review maybe, 1,000 or hundreds of studies on that particular issue to come to this decision. So it's more, I think I'm trying my best to give a more comprehensive and unbiased viewpoint of the science that's available.
Great. Well, a couple of people are saying that since you're all about the science, they're saying they're currently listening to the Food Revolution Summit this week, where they're saying, coffee is good, have 5 cups a day, a little wine might be okay. So, can get confusing, Dr. Fuhrman.
Well, I mean, that's why I want people to, that's why I think people, you hear a lot of things, but I'm obviously, I think I'm coming to what's more reasonable for people and trying to interpret that science and give them information so they can make a good decision on. I mean, we all know that alcohol is carcinogenic. Just because, people, the studies on women show that even 1 glass of wine a day increases risk of breast cancer somewhere between 10 and 12%. It's not a huge risk, but it is a risk. And for some people, that risk can be higher than other people who are more genetically prone to that. So my niche is to give people what's ideal. And if they want to deviate or have these little compromises, that's their choice. I don't want to, they should look at the studies that show the risk and be aware of them. Not having a doctor say, oh, that's good to know. That's good to eat coffee. It's good to drink alcohol. They should be exposed to the studies on both sides and be able to make a decision based on the data and how severe the risk is.
Well, that makes sense. People are requesting a pickleball tournament between us. Do you ever get down here? I know you're going to beat me.
I'm not far from you.
That's great.
I've moved to San Diego, but I'm going back to New Jersey to close on my house. And then by the end of May, I'll be permanently here most of the time. But so I'm in the San Diego area now. And yeah, I've been in pickleball tournaments actually, like many years ago.
I bet you're really good.
I'm a good tennis player. I'm sure I could play it pretty well.
Yeah, I'm sure you're going to. Robert Cheek, the vegan bodybuilder, is watching, and he said he saw you 3 years ago with ripped abs, and he says you're just in amazing shape.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I saw this picture recently. It's funny. You can look at a person who's like 80 years old with ripped abs. It looks great. And a person a person like 66, 65, 70 years old who looks really young and really healthy. And a person that same age who looks really healthy and really sick and really aged. And that's what my point is, that it's not just not getting sick. It's also keeping your youthful body and mind so you can enjoy living life longer.
Right.
Fully enjoying everything longer.
Well, it's great to hear that you actually do enjoy life. Not that I didn't think you did, but it's nice to hear that you like to read and have other pursuits other than, just doctor stuff. So that was great getting to know you a little bit more on that level. Do you have any last thoughts about what's going on? Because people are really scared right now, whether they're overweight or sick or not. It just, just maybe some words of hope for our planet.
Well, I have 2 things to say. Is number 1, this is going to pass, and you can keep great health, and use this as an opportunity to ratchet up your health to a very high level. If you do that, you have nothing to worry about. It doesn't take months and months of eating right to ratchet your health up, because within weeks we see dramatic improvement in white blood cell activity and immune responsiveness, and do all the things. Study a little bit more of the full comprehensive approach here to superior nutrition. And number 2, of course, the major fear affecting mankind is not coronavirus, it's climate change. And so we're headed for disaster if we don't change things, and changing the way we all eat as a society has to be part of the solution. So keeping in good health, so you can help us all in that fight, so we can have the world be in existence for future generations and our children and grandchildren, is also a critical thing we have to keep in the mind, because we have a lot of people in this country who think for the moment, and they only they're trying to control their riches, and future generations, or taking care of the planet doesn't matter to these people. So we have to really all get as much politically powerful and economically powerful of opposition to where the government is, where the world has been going, so we can protect the world for future generations. We do have some things to worry about, but we have to activate together and do the right thing. And the place to start is with this: take care of your health first, so we all can get things done in our lives that we want to do.
Great. I believe it was you who said our health is our greatest wealth.
That's right. And I also say it's not so much keeping your hands away from your face, it's keeping the junk food out of your hands.
I love it. That's a perfect place to end. Thank you so much, Dr. Fuhrman. I really enjoyed our time together today.
Thank you. Me too.
Yeah. And ladies and gentlemen, please come back in about 2 hours at 2 p.m. when I'll be interviewing Mike the vegan. And tomorrow at noon, I'll be interviewing a plant-based dermatologist who's actually watching live, named Dr. Jessica Krant. Again, thank you, Dr. Fuhrman. It was very, very wonderful, your time with us.
My pleasure.